How's it going, everybody? Today we are back in Kingdom Come Deliverance. The second game is just around the corner, so today I thought we could go through the story of the first game just so we are ready for the second one, because the second game will be a continuation of Henry's adventures. Now, of course, we will go through the entire story, so there will be major spoilers ahead. Having that said though, the game picks up in the silver mining town of Skalitz, and that is where we meet our protagonist Henry. Now, Henry is a young apprentice living with his mother and his blacksmith father, Martin. And in the beginning, Henry is presented to us as a regular kid. He helps out his father with his business, and he spends time with his friends, and occasionally Henry and his pals get up to all sorts of mischief, like throwing manure at people's houses.
What are you waiting for, soldier? Fire the trebuchet! For king and country!
For king and country, my ass. This is all good, clean, fun.
But in the beginning of the video game, Henry and his father craft a sword for Sir Radzik, who visits to admire the weapon with a nobleman called Sir Istvan Thoth. And after their visit, Skalitz is attacked by an army of Cuman soldiers, and in the attack, Henry's parents are killed by a nobleman called Sir Markvart von Olets. Luckily though, Henry manages to survive and he flees with a sword to Talmberg to warn its lord, Sir Davish, of the attack. Now, taking advantage of a storm during the night, Sir Radzik sneaks the survivors out of Skalitz and then heads towards Ratay. But the next morning, the army that attacked Skalitz appears outside of Talmberg looking for the survivors of Skalitz and for Sir Radzik, but Davish manages to parlay with Markvart and convinces him to leave. Now, of course, Henry is devastated that he lost his parents and his home, so he returns to Skalitz to try and bury both of his parents. And whilst he tries to do just that, Henry is confronted by a band of bandits led by a man named Runt, who attacks Henry and steals the last sword that he and his father crafted. Luckily though, Henry is saved by another Skalitz survivor called Teresa and Captain Robart from Talberg and his guard, who take him to Ratay to be harbored by Peshek, the local miller, and Teresa's uncle. Now, of course, if we so choose, Teresa can be Henry's main romantical interest throughout the game. They both know each other from Skalitz, they both lost a lot, so it kinda makes sense that they gravitate towards each other. But seeking to recover his father's sword and avenge his parents, Henry manages to enter the service of Sir Hanush, the acting lord of Ratay and guardian to his young nephew, Lord Hans Capon. And Henry kinda gets to babysit Lord Capon for a bit, and during a hunting trip they are attacked by Cumans, but Henry manages to prove himself by saving Lord Capon, and just like that he becomes Radzik's envoy. And as his envoy, Henry then helps investigate a bandit raid on a local farm in Nov, which leads him to a concealed camp in Pripyatlavets. And then we find a band of bandits and Cumans, and Runt, the guy that attacked us in the beginning of the game and stole our sword, is there as well. Now, of course, we attack the camp and manage to defeat Runt, but as it turns out, our sword is no longer in the possession of Runt. Now, the camp leads the lords to believe that someone is secretly raising an insurgency in the land, and Henry follows a couple of different leads to discover a group of bandits operating near Sasau who are recruiting mercenaries with counterfeit coins. Now, Henry unravels the conspiracy and infiltrates the bandit ranks, leading him to their stronghold in Vranik. And there we encounter Thoth again. We first met him in Skalitz just before the attack at the beginning of the video game. The main baddie was right there in front of us since the very beginning of the game. Now, of course, Sir Istvan Thoth recognizes Henry and has him captured and tortured. Since he has Henry captured, Thoth kinda decides to reveal his entire master plan to us. I guess he was thinking that Henry is not gonna make it out of there alive, but he tells us his plan, and he also reveals a really important piece of information for Henry. He says that Henry is actually Sir Radzik's son.
I'm sorry, sir. This fellow...
Henry.
I told you he had balls.
Well, I see that you haven't been idle, and we'll certainly need to have a talk later, but not quite so publicly.
But as it turns out, a former Skalitz villager, Zbigniew, is there as well, and he helps Henry escape, and we manage to warn the lords of Sir Istvan's treachery. Now Radzik also acknowledges Henry as his son, and then the lords and their combined forces assault Vranik and defeat its garrison. However, Thoth, Lord Istvan Thoth, and a number of his mercenaries infiltrate Talmberg and capture his castle, taking Divish's wife, Stephanie, and Sir Radzik, Henry's father, as hostages. Now, of course, we have no choice but to lay siege to Talmberg, and Conrad Kieser is recruited to help build a trebuchet. And this guy, let me tell you, this guy is an absolute shyster. Whilst we help him out, right, he wants us to meet somebody, and he says that we have to give this somebody a password.
The very thing. Go to the Sasau scribe and say to him, the fox isn't half as clever as he thinks. Then he'll do as you ask.
Is that a password?
Just so.
But as it turns out, the password, well, it's non-existent.
I have a message for you. The ferret outsmarted the fox, and it's not even that clever.
What?
The password about the fox?
What in heaven's name are you blabbering about?
Conrad Kieser sent me.
Why the hell didn't you say so?
That sod. He deliberately lied to me to make me look stupid.
He does build a trebuchet though, and we use it to breach the castle walls, and the lords and their soldiers overwhelm Thoth's men, and Hanush negotiates the release of the hostages in exchange for Thoth's safe departure. But as it turns out, Thoth leaves with our sword, the sword that we spent the entire game trying to recover, and guess what? He also decides to be a prick about it.
Oh, I almost forgot. Your sword. I expect you'll want it back after all the trouble you went to. Actually, you know what? I think I'll keep it. As a memento.
This isn't over. I'll find you.
I look forward to it.
But after he escapes, he does leave Henry's father go, Sir Radzik, but we do not recover our sword, and we don't really manage to get any sort of revenge either. Not on Thoth and not on the guy that took Henry's parents away from him. Now, of course, Henry's story takes place in the middle of this power struggle, let's call it, between Sigismund and King Wenceslaus. And it's Sigismund's army that destroys Henry's peaceful life in Skalitz, and by the end of the game, Henry and everybody else have this big meeting with a guy called Jobst from Moravia, who has negotiated an alliance with various nobles throughout the empire against Sigismund. So Henry and Lord Hans are sent to Trotsky Castle with a letter inquiring whether or not the lord of this castle would side with them against Sigismund. Also, by the end of the game, we have this really heartwarming scene where Martin visits Henry in a dream, and he tells him that he's proud of Henry, and then he and his wife walk off, well, into the afterlife. So I believe the second game will pick up with Henry and Lord Hans making their way towards Trotsky Castle to meet up with this lord and forge an alliance against Sigismund. But there we have it. That is kind of how the story of the first game goes. I've managed to finish it the other day actually. It took me quite a bit of time, but I finished it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I am very excited to check out the second game. But there you go. That's about it from me today. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. I hope you have enjoyed. In case you did, be sure to drop some stuff and things down below. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one with some more video games.